Hey, this is Annie, and today we're going to be navigating that feeling you have when you feel like you aren't good enough. Because I think that feeling is a very human feeling, and if you can hit that like button below, that showcases that you also think that that is a very human feeling. So with that said, let's navigate this feeling together and let's get lucid. So this video is actually based off of an article I wrote called Falling Short, Bridges and Fires, and while it was for a post-grad version of me, I can say that the content of it still holds true and remains to this day, because while it looked like from the outside I was doing fine, on the inside, well, that was a different story. You see, I was still dealing with events from the past that had occurred, namely being laid off, and that would show up as ghosts and it would be triggered whenever I felt my shortcomings as a designer. So, of course, plaguing my mind was this question of, why is it that I never feel good enough? Or rather, the question can become, why is it that we never feel good enough? And I think the funny thing is, while this question was one that I held in my post-grad years, I can definitely say that, this feeling pops up every now and then. And so this question doesn't quite become a question. Sometimes it then transitions and becomes a statement. And that statement becomes, I just feel inadequate. It reminds me of this cycle that I'm guilty of falling into, that I think we're all guilty of falling into. So this is kind of my cycle, but when I was in Santa Cruz, I wanted to be elsewhere, and when my elsewhere was San Diego, I wanted to be out of school, and when I was out of school, I wanted, to be in a job, and when I was in a job, I wanted out, and am I where I want to be, or am I anticipating the next step? So the too long didn't read version, TLDR version, when we're physically where we wanted to be, / when we physically obtain what we want, mentally we are no longer there. We're no longer present and we're fixated on something else, right? And so it's this whole notion of, I'm here, but I want to be there. I'm there, but I want to be here, so I guess I'm never satisfied anywhere. It's super cyclical, but where we are now, point A is always going to be a collection of our past. In order to get to point B, we would have to bridge that gap between point A and point B, and in doing so, we fall right back into the cycle. And the issue isn't the cycle, because the cycle is inevitable. The issue then becomes what Tony Robbins might, say is the divide of where we currently are to where we want to be. This notion of a blueprint, or, a story that we have in our head of where we should be. So what we're talking about here is that when the blueprint doesn't match our current reality, this discrepancy is what causes major frustrations and stress. So the blueprint that I had as a designer back then was that I needed to know the programs inside out, and I needed to churn out these work super duper quick. And on top of that, I needed to be really, really, really good. And the thing is, in that current reality, I was just okay, and I just was not my blueprint. And so there's this disconnect where I so badly wanted to be my blueprint. And I also didn't want to suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is believing that I was more than 100%, right? Instead, I wanted to be honest / I'm not good enough yet. And I think that's okay to say, because I know that there are tons of better designers out there, but what's worse is that feeling of, I'm not good enough, or I don't feel like I'm good enough. Because I do think there is a vast difference between saying, I'm not good enough yet, versus I am not good enough, right? On one hand, you have something that leaves room for possibilities because you say, yet, implying that maybe someday you can reach that goal. And then on the other hand, you have something like, I am not, / I don't feel, right? And so this feels more definitive. And I bring this up because there is this push and pull, right? Where some of it is the truth, where I am not good enough yet. And then others are exaggerations of that truth, right? I am not good enough / I don't feel like I'm enough. Those are exaggerations. And I think that's really good to know because, at least for myself, when I know that, it keeps me away from fully immersing myself into the pool of purely reacting to emotions and feelings. On top of that, I know that there is a gap, and Ira Glass puts it beautifully when he says this, and in the context that he's speaking in, he's talking about beginner creatives and good work, but I like to parallel that with me becoming a better version of myself, right? There is a gap, and let's try to bridge it. And on top of trying to bridge it, let's also burn it. And when I say let's also burn it, what I'm referring to is a TEDx talk by Taylor Gam, I think that's how you say his last name, but in it, he talks about burning the false sense of yourself, right? And so let's bridge and let's burn. And I know I'm not the only one that feels inadequate, but the core of this question isn't, why don't I feel as if I'm enough? The core of this question is, why don't I see things truly as it is, with no embellishments, just as they truly are? And in doing so, why not bridge that gap to become a better version of ourselves, all while lighting up the false sense of self on fire? And on a last note, if we're talking about seeing things as they truly are, then I definitely think it's okay to tell yourself that I'm not good enough, but you have to add the word yet to it. So I'm not good enough yet. And you have to know that the possibility is still there. So if this was helpful, please do share this video and like, comment, subscribe. Do so because this does actually help other people find this channel / video, and in doing so, it'll help them as well. So with that said, keep shining, and I'll see you around for the next video, whenever that is. Bye. Heather when based off of a video. Okay.